The barren land stretched endlessly under a crimson sky. Jagged rocks rose from the ground like broken teeth, and the winds carried dust that smelled faintly metallic. Every step on the hard, cracked soil sent tiny clouds of red grit swirling into the air. Amid this harsh, lifeless world, a figure lay crumpled and still. Her wings, tattered and glowing faintly, twitched as if she were fighting an invisible weight pressing down upon her. She was no ordinary being. Her scales shimmered with colors that seemed impossible under the dim light of the twin suns. She was a dragon, a princess of her kind, and she was dying. Kalira had been abandoned. Her own people had left her behind when she was injured during the rebellion against the alien empire. She had been their hope, their pride, yet when defeat came, they decided she was a liability. She remembered their faces as they left her, cold and uncaring. The words they spat echoed in her mind. Too weak to lead. Too weak to survive. Pain coursed through her body, not just from her wounds but from betrayal so deep it burned in her heart. Her wings were fractured, her limbs bruised, and every breath felt heavier than the last. She tried to rise, but her strength was gone, her body refusing to obey. Far above the planet, a small human ship moved cautiously through the thin atmosphere. Humans were explorers, curious and daring, but they were fragile compared to the creatures they sometimes encountered. Dr. Elias Carter, the medic aboard the ship, scanned the planet's surface. He had been sent to look for signs of life, perhaps even intelligent life, but this desolate world had shown no signs yet. His ship dipped closer to the ground as he spotted movement. At first he thought it was a shadow or a trick of the light, but then he saw her, a massive, shimmering form struggling against the wind. Elias hesitated for only a moment before landing. He had faced dangerous situations before, but nothing prepared him for the sight of the dragon princess. Kalira's eyes opened slightly, glowing softly, filled with both pain and defiance. Despite her injuries, she radiated an aura of strength and dignity. Elias felt a mix of awe and fear. He had read about dragons in alien biology records, but seeing one alive, wounded, and on the brink of death was something else entirely. He approached cautiously, lowering himself so as not to startle her. "I'm here to help," he said softly. She didn't respond, her wings shivering in the wind. Elias studied her wounds. Several scales were cracked, exposing the delicate tissue beneath, and he could see that her breathing was shallow. He quickly retrieved his medkit and some portable healing compounds designed for alien physiology. It was experimental, but it might be enough to stabilize her. Kalira flinched as he touched her, but she didn't attack. She was too weak to resist, and there was a part of her that wanted to survive, even if she hated needing anyone. Elias worked quickly, mixing compounds with human medical tools, adjusting temperature and pressure to match her alien biology. Sweat ran down his forehead as he treated each wound. He could feel her strength returning slightly as the compounds took effect. Slowly she lifted her head, her eyes meeting his. They were filled with suspicion and a faint spark of curiosity. "You will help me." Her voice was inside his mind, a soft telepathic echo. Elias froze for a moment. He had read that some dragon species communicated mentally, but hearing it firsthand was almost overwhelming. "Yes," he said. "I'll help you survive. That's what I do. I save lives." He added what he could of alien plants he had found nearby. Some had healing properties, and created a mixture of human and alien medicine to keep her stable. Kalira watched him silently, occasionally testing her wings and limbs. Her pride made her hesitate to accept help fully, but she could feel the difference already. Humans were weaker than her species physically, yet this one had shown courage, intelligence, and care. Perhaps there was hope in trusting him. Over the next hours, Elias spoke quietly to her. He asked questions about her life, her world, and her people. Kalira was reluctant at first, but slowly she began to share fragments. She spoke of her kingdom, its beauty, and its cruel rulers. She spoke of battles fought and alliances broken, of her people's expectations and betrayals. Elias listened, fascinated by her history and saddened by her suffering. He realized that this was more than a physical rescue. He was witnessing the survival of a proud, intelligent being who had been cast aside by her own kind. The night was long, filled with strange sounds of alien creatures moving through the barren landscape. Kalira stirred occasionally, testing her strength, while Elias stayed by her side, monitoring her vitals. He was careful not to intrude too much, letting her rest when she needed, offering comfort when the wind was too harsh. Slowly, they began to understand each other. She learned that humans, despite their small size, had minds capable of great ingenuity. He learned that dragons, though powerful, could be vulnerable and lonely, and that trust could be earned through patience and care. As dawn broke, the crimson sky softened to a pale orange. The barren land glimmered under the first light of the sun. Kalira had regained enough strength to move more freely, testing her wings with small, careful motions. Elias watched with admiration. She was not just surviving, she was fighting to live, refusing to let betrayal define her. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the rocks. A predator, something native to the planet, had detected them. It was large, with multiple limbs and glowing eyes that reflected the sunlight. Elias froze for a moment, realizing that the situation could turn deadly. Kalira's instincts kicked in. Despite her injuries, she rose to her full height, spreading her wings. Her scales shimmered, catching the light, and her eyes glowed brighter. The predator hesitated, sensing the strength and presence of the dragon. Elias stayed behind her, offering support but trusting her judgment. Kalira let out a low, rumbling growl and spread her wings further, creating a wall of light and heat. The predator snarled, then slowly retreated, deciding that this fight was not worth the risk. Elias exhaled deeply, impressed. "You're incredible," he said softly. Kalira looked at him, her expression unreadable, but a flicker of acknowledgement passed through her eyes. She had survived because of him, but she had also survived because she refused to die. In the following days, Elias and Kalira began a routine. He tended to her wounds and taught her about human techniques for survival in harsh environments. She shared her knowledge of the planet, showing him safe paths, sources of water, and edible plants. They became a team, each learning from the other. Kalira discovered that humans could be resourceful in ways her species rarely considered, while Elias saw that courage and determination were as strong as physical power. One evening, as the twin suns set, painting the sky in streaks of red and gold, Kalira spoke again in his mind. "Why do you help me, human? You could leave and I would die. Why stay?" Elias paused, thinking carefully. "Because life is valuable. Because someone needs to stand up when others abandon the weak. Because even a small species can make a difference." Kalira considered this, and for the first time since her betrayal, she felt a flicker of hope. The bond between them grew stronger. Kalira began to trust him, relying on his knowledge and care, while Elias found himself inspired by her resilience. They were an unlikely pair, a wounded alien dragon princess and a human medic, but together they had the chance to survive where others had failed. The barren land no longer seemed entirely hostile. With teamwork, courage, and ingenuity, it could become a place of refuge. By the end of the first week, Kalira could walk short distances and flap her wings lightly. Elias had improvised a harness to support her as she practiced flight in short bursts. The human's persistence and careful observation allowed her to regain strength faster than she expected. She began to see that perhaps survival wasn't just about raw power, but about cleverness, determination, and the courage to accept help when it was offered. For the first time since she was abandoned, Kalira dared to hope. There was still a long journey ahead, but she was no longer alone. Humans, despite their fragile bodies, had a spirit that could match even the strongest dragons. And for Elias, seeing her recover and fight to survive reminded him why he became a medic. It wasn't just to save lives. It was to protect dignity, to honor the spark of determination in any being brave enough to keep going. As night fell again, the two sat in silence, watching the crimson winds of the barren land swirl around them. The world was harsh, but they had found a way to exist within it. The journey was just beginning, and already a bond had formed that neither betrayal, danger, nor despair could break. Kalira's eyes glowed softly in the darkness, not with fear but with resolve. Elias sat beside her, ready for whatever the barren land would throw at them next. Together, they would face it. The days passed slowly on the barren planet, but for Kalira and Elias, every moment was a lesson in survival. The winds remained harsh, the ground jagged and the air dry, but their small sanctuary, a mix of human technology and alien flora, had become a haven. Kalira's wings were stronger now, though she still could not fly long distances. Elias continued to monitor her injuries, adjusting treatments, and experimenting with alien plant compounds he had found nearby. Every day, Kalira felt the human medic's steady care and ingenuity, and slowly she began to trust him more. Kalira had always been proud, taught from birth that weakness was shameful. Yet, for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to depend on another. Elias, on the other hand, was learning about dragon biology in ways no human manual could have prepared him for. He observed her scales, the faint glow that pulsed with her heartbeat, and the way her muscles moved even when she tried to hide her pain. He realized that her species was not just physically strong, it was intelligent, disciplined, and capable of surviving under conditions humans could barely endure. One morning, Kalira stirred before dawn. The winds were quieter and the red sky was tinged with gold. She flexed her wings carefully, testing the strength in her muscles. Elias watched from nearby, a small smile on his face. "You're making progress faster than I expected," he said softly. Kalira's eyes, still cautious, met his. "Your species is persistent," she replied telepathically. "Weak yet stubborn. I see why others like you survive." Elias chuckled, appreciating the faint compliment hidden in her words. The silence of the barren land was broken by the occasional distant roar or scuttling of alien creatures, but it was the quiet that allowed them to communicate, to understand each other. Kalira began to share fragments of her memory, her home, her family, and the betrayal that had left her stranded. Elias listened carefully, never interrupting, only asking gentle questions when needed. He learned that Kalira had been a leader, trained to command her people in both war and diplomacy. She had intelligence, courage, and honor, yet all of that had been ignored by those who deemed her unworthy. Elias realized that humans, though fragile compared to dragons, could offer something her kind often lacked: adaptability. While dragons relied on strength and ancient traditions, humans could improvise, think quickly, and turn small advantages into survival. Kalira began to see that Elias' mind was as sharp as any blade, and that sometimes the weakest creature could change the course of events with cleverness and courage. Their days followed a rhythm of healing, exploration, and teaching. Kalira showed Elias safe paths across the rocky terrain, hidden water sources, and plants that could heal minor wounds. Elias taught her to use his tools, improvising protective gear and adapting human medical techniques to alien physiology. They discovered small victories together, Kalira learning to walk longer distances, her wings regaining strength, and Elias learning to anticipate her needs before she expressed them. A bond was forming, one built on trust, respect, and shared survival. One afternoon, while they were collecting water from a narrow canyon, the ground shook. Kalira froze, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Something approaches," she warned telepathically. Elias tightened his grip on his satchel, heart racing. They were not alone. In the distance, figures moved with purpose, scouts from the alien empire that had once hunted her, unaware that Kalira had survived. Elias felt a surge of fear, but he quickly pushed it aside. Humans were not physically strong, but they could be clever, resourceful, and courageous. "We can't outrun them," he whispered. Kalira nodded, wings spreading slightly, shimmering in the sun. "Then we face them," she said firmly. "We will not be prey." Kalira's experience as a leader allowed her to anticipate the enemy's tactics. Elias watched, learning how she thought, how she calculated risk and advantage. He realized that dragons were not just strong, they were strategic, disciplined, and patient. Using this knowledge, he began to suggest minor adjustments, showing her how human ingenuity could complement her natural instincts. As the scouts drew closer, Kalira and Elias prepared. Elias rigged small devices from his ship and alien plants that could emit blinding flashes or loud sounds. Kalira practiced short flights, ready to strike or retreat if necessary. They were an unlikely pair, a wounded dragon princess and a human medic, but together they had a chance. When the scouts finally arrived, they were met not with fear, but with determination and careful planning. The scouts moved cautiously, scanning the terrain. Kalira's wings flared, her glowing scales creating a dazzling display that made it difficult for the enemies to focus. Elias activated his devices, sending bright flashes and loud noises that confused the scouts. Together, dragon and human worked in harmony, a combination of strength, strategy, and clever improvisation. The scouts underestimated Kalira's abilities and the humans' ingenuity and were forced to retreat after a tense standoff. After the encounter, Kalira turned to Elias. "Your species, you surprise me," she said softly. "I thought humans were weak, unable to face what is stronger. Yet you think, plan, and act with courage." Elias smiled faintly, feeling pride and respect. "Strength is not just physical," he said. "Sometimes the mind, determination, and courage matter more than muscles or fire." Kalira considered his words, the truth settling deep within her. Over the next several days, the barren land became less threatening. Kalira's strength continued to grow, and Elias' knowledge of alien terrain and creatures expanded. They explored farther from their shelter, discovering hidden canyons, rare plants, and small water sources that could sustain them. Kalira began to teach Elias more about her world, sharing lessons on survival, honor, and strategy. Elias absorbed every detail, fascinated by her wisdom and adaptability. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Kalira spoke. "I have lived many cycles and faced many battles," she said. "Yet I have never known a creature like you, human, fragile yet persistent, weak yet capable. I begin to see, perhaps there is hope in your species after all." Elias felt a warmth in his chest, not from pride, but from understanding. The bond between them had grown stronger than either could have expected. The following morning brought a new challenge. Strange tracks appeared near their shelter, evidence that larger, more dangerous creatures were moving nearby. Kalira tensed, her wings flickering with energy. Elias quickly assessed the tracks, noting their size and pattern. They were fast, intelligent, and potentially aggressive. Together, they devised a plan to avoid confrontation. Kalira would use her flight to scout ahead, while Elias would reinforce their shelter and prepare minor deterrents. As they worked, Kalira reflected on the differences between humans and dragons. Humans lacked the physical power to dominate their environment, but they compensated with creativity, adaptability, and courage. Elias' mind was a weapon, capable of solving problems and creating solutions that her kind might never consider. She began to see a new kind of strength, one that did not come from scales, fire, or wings, but from determination, intelligence, and heart. The day passed without direct confrontation, but Kalira and Elias remained vigilant. Each encounter, each challenge, strengthened their partnership. They learned to trust one another completely, understanding that survival required not just strength or skill, but collaboration. The barren land, once hostile and unforgiving, became a proving ground where human ingenuity and dragon power worked together in harmony. As night fell, Kalira stretched her wings, testing their full span. Elias watched, offering guidance and support where needed. The bond between them was more than survival, it was mutual respect and admiration. They had faced danger, learned from one another, and discovered that even the most unlikely pair could overcome adversity when working together. Kalira turned to Elias, her eyes glowing softly in the darkness. I have seen many species, many warriors, she said, yet I have never known one like you. Perhaps humans are not as weak as my people believed. Perhaps they can change the course of fate. Elias smiled, humbled by her words. We may be small, but we have courage, intelligence, and determination. That is enough to make a difference. Kalira and Elias sat together in their sanctuary, two beings from different worlds, united by survival and trust. The future was uncertain and dangers remained, but they were no longer alone. They had each other, and together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time, Kalira allowed herself to believe in hope. The betrayal of her own people was still a wound, but the human beside her offered a new path, a path of survival, courage, and unexpected friendship. Elias, in turn, had discovered that humans could achieve greatness not through brute strength, but through heart, ingenuity, and steadfast resolve. The barren land was harsh, unforgiving, and full of unknown threats, but for Kalira and Elias, it had become a place of growth, learning, and unity. Together they had survived, and together they would face the challenges that lay ahead, stronger and wiser than either could have imagined. The barren land, once silent and empty, now seemed alive with distant sounds. Kalira had been feeling stronger each day. Her wings healed enough for longer flights, and her scales had regained much of their shimmer. Elias had grown more confident as well, learning the rhythms of the planet and the quirks of alien flora and fauna. Together, they had become a team, each complementing the other in ways neither had expected. One morning, as the twin suns rose, painting the sky in deep orange and red, Kalira sensed something unusual. Her telepathic instincts picked up a disturbance, a faint pulse of life moving swiftly across the land. She tensed, her wings flexing automatically. Elias noticed the change and followed her gaze. In the distance, small figures were approaching, moving with careful precision. They were scouts from the alien empire, the same force that had abandoned Kalira. Elias swallowed hard but kept his composure. He had faced challenges before, but nothing like this. Kalira's presence gave him courage. "We can handle this," she said telepathically, her voice calm yet firm. "We will not be hunted again, not by them." Elias nodded, trusting her judgment. Together they moved to a high vantage point, a jagged ridge that overlooked the valley where the scouts were advancing. Kalira studied the enemy's movements. The scouts were armed with advanced weaponry, their armor gleaming under the suns. They moved in a coordinated pattern, clearly trained and experienced. Kalira's heart, though wounded in the past, hardened with resolve. She had survived betrayal, pain, and abandonment. She would survive this too. Elias looked at her, admiration shining in his eyes. "What's the plan?" he asked quietly. Kalira thought for a moment. "We do not fight them directly. That would be foolish. We are fewer, weaker physically, but we are clever. We use the land, your devices, and my powers. We make them underestimate us." Elias nodded, understanding. Humans were often small and fragile, but with strategy and ingenuity, even a weaker species could outsmart a stronger opponent. They began preparing. Elias gathered materials from his ship, assembling devices that could emit blinding lights, loud noises, and smoke. He mixed in alien plant compounds to create effects the scouts would not expect. Kalira studied the terrain, identifying natural traps, narrow ravines, jagged rock formations, and hidden crevices. They would use every advantage the land could offer. When the scouts drew closer, Kalira and Elias were ready. Kalira flared her wings, creating a dazzling display of colors and light that reflected off the rocky surfaces. Elias activated his devices in sequence, producing flashes and sounds that disoriented the approaching scouts. The combination of Kalira's natural abilities and human ingenuity created chaos among the enemy ranks. The scouts faltered, unsure of the source of the strange phenomena. Kalira swooped down from the ridge, her claws and tail moving with precision, striking only when necessary to push them back. Elias guided her, calling out instructions and adjusting his devices to maximize the effect. They moved in perfect harmony, dragon and human working as one. Despite their advantage, the scouts were skilled and persistent. They regrouped and tried to flank Kalira and Elias. Kalira responded with swift aerial maneuvers, forcing them to retreat into the terrain she had studied. Elias laid traps along the paths, using rocks, plant compounds, and makeshift barriers to slow their progress. The scouts underestimated their opponents. They had expected an easy hunt, but now they faced strategy, intelligence, and courage far beyond what they anticipated. Hours passed, and the battle of wits continued. Kalira's strength was not what it had been at her prime, but her mind was sharp. She anticipated the scouts' moves, adjusting her tactics constantly. Elias adapted alongside her, using human creativity to exploit weaknesses the scouts did not know existed. Together, they turned the barren land into a labyrinth, a place where the enemy's numbers and weapons became less effective. Eventually, the scouts began to falter. Confused and exhausted, they retreated from the valley, realizing that their prey was not defenseless. Kalira and Elias had won the encounter, not with brute force but with strategy, teamwork, and courage. Kalira hovered above the ridge, wings spreading wide, glowing in the light of the setting suns. She looked at Elias, a silent acknowledgement of his role in their success. "You have changed my view of your species," she said telepathically. "I believed humans were weak, fragile, and incapable of true survival, but you think, adapt, and act with courage. You are worthy allies." Elias smiled faintly. "Strength isn't always about size or power," he said. "Sometimes it's about courage, cleverness, and working together." Kalira considered this, her mind opening to possibilities she had never imagined. The victory brought relief, but it also marked a turning point. Kalira realized that she could not rely solely on her own power. She needed allies, and humans could be part of that. Elias understood that humans, often overlooked by stronger species, had a role to play in shaping the future. Together, they were stronger than they could be apart. In the days that followed, Kalira and Elias continued their routine of training, healing, and exploration. Kalira's wings strengthened, allowing longer flights, while Elias learned to anticipate her needs and movements instinctively. They discovered new parts of the barren land, hidden canyons, small water pools, and rare plants that could aid in healing. Each day they grew more confident, more capable, and more united. One afternoon, Kalira detected movement on the horizon. This time it was not scouts, but something larger, a patrol from the alien empire, clearly searching for her. Elias felt a surge of apprehension, but Kalira's calm determination steadied him. "We are not alone, but we are prepared," she said. "We will face them, but this time, we will not wait for them to make mistakes. We will choose the battlefield." The patrol entered the canyon, confident and unaware of the traps ahead. The encounter was tense. The alien patrol moved carefully, but the combined tactics of dragon and human forced them into disadvantageous positions. Kalira struck precisely, only when necessary, guiding the patrol into Elias' traps. Smoke, light, and noise created disorientation, and the patrol began to retreat, unable to advance further. Elias' devices and quick thinking amplified Kalira's natural abilities, turning the canyon into a fortress of strategy. After the patrol withdrew, Kalira landed near Elias, wings folding gracefully. "Your species, it surprises me every day," she said. "I have seen many warriors, many leaders, but I have never seen such ingenuity combined with courage. Perhaps humans are more than I imagined." Elias felt pride, but also humility. He knew that it was their teamwork that had achieved this victory, not just one individual's skill. Kalira spent the following days strengthening her own abilities while training with Elias on strategic thinking. She taught him how to read enemy movements, predict tactics, and use the environment to their advantage. Elias shared human innovations, creating tools and devices that augmented her abilities. Together, they became more than a medic and a patient. They became partners, combining strength, intelligence, and courage in ways neither could have achieved alone. As they rested one evening, Kalira spoke again, her voice telepathic but soft. "I have faced betrayal, pain, and abandonment," she said. "Yet with you I see hope. Perhaps my people, my world, can be saved not by strength alone, but by cooperation, courage, and cleverness." Elias nodded, understanding the significance of her words. Humans, often underestimated, had proven their value. They were capable of changing the course of events, even against seemingly impossible odds. The barren land, once a place of danger and despair, had become a proving ground. Kalira's recovery and the victories against the alien scouts demonstrated that courage, intelligence, and teamwork could overcome brute force. Elias had shown that humans, though physically weaker, could make a profound impact through ingenuity and determination. Together, they had turned survival into triumph, setting the stage for even greater challenges ahead. One night, under the glow of the twin suns' fading light, Kalira looked toward the horizon. The alien empire's forces were still out there, but she no longer felt fear. She had allies now, and humans, fragile, clever, and courageous, had earned her trust and respect. Elias stood beside her, ready for whatever the future held. Together they would face it, stronger and wiser than either could have imagined alone. The stars above the barren land were distant, yet full of possibilities. Kalira and Elias, dragon and human, had learned to survive, to adapt, and to trust. The alien empire would come again, but they would be ready. They had forged a bond, one that combined strength, intellect, and courage. The story of survival had become a story of hope, proving that even in the harshest conditions, ingenuity and heart could prevail. The barren land had become a place of preparation. Kalira stretched her wings, now strong enough to carry her through long flights across the jagged landscape. Elias worked nearby, assembling devices and traps, blending human ingenuity with alien technology and the plants Kalira had shown him. The bond between them had grown stronger with each encounter. They had survived ambushes, outsmarted scouts, and tested each other's limits. Now the time had come to act, not just survive. Kalira perched on a high ridge, scanning the horizon with sharp eyes. Her mind, once clouded by betrayal and pain, was now focused on strategy. "The scouts will return, but this time we will not wait for them to find us," she said telepathically to Elias. "We will turn the hunter into the hunted." Elias nodded, already imagining how to use the canyon networks, cliffs, and narrow passes to their advantage. Humans were often underestimated by stronger species, but their creativity could become a powerful weapon when combined with Kalira's strength. They spent the following days preparing. Elias worked tirelessly, building small devices that could create bursts of light, smoke, and noise to confuse enemy patrols. He set tripwires, traps, and diversion systems, using natural terrain to amplify their effect. Kalira scouted from above, marking enemy paths and weaknesses, teaching Elias how to anticipate movement and respond quickly. Every day they ran drills, improving coordination, timing, and reaction. They were no longer simply surviving, they were planning an offensive. Kalira shared more of her knowledge about the alien empire's tactics. They relied on power, intimidation, and overwhelming numbers, but they underestimated the value of intelligence and unpredictability. Elias applied his human logic, thinking in ways the empire could not anticipate. Together, they designed a plan to strike not with force but with cunning, turning every strength the empire had against them. The day arrived. The alien patrols were moving through the valleys, following the tracks Kalira had left in the past. They believed the land was empty, that the dragon princess was gone. But Kalira and Elias had prepared. Using a combination of natural camouflage, devices, and Kalira's aerial scouting, they created a network of traps and ambush points. Smoke and light bursts disoriented the patrols as they advanced into the canyon. Rocks fell from above in controlled landslides, blocking paths and forcing the patrols into narrow spaces where Kalira's strikes were most effective. Elias stayed close to the ground, moving devices and guiding Kalira. His small size and agility allowed him to reach places the scouts could not anticipate. He placed smoke emitters and reflective surfaces to confuse sensors, while Kalira struck precisely, using her wings, tail, and claws to control the battlefield. Every move was coordinated, every action planned and adjusted in real time. The Empire's scouts found themselves trapped and confused, unable to advance or retreat effectively. Kalira felt a thrill she had not known in cycles. Not from vengeance, but from the realization that humans, her unexpected allies, could turn the tide of battle. She had always relied on her power alone, but now she saw the strength that came from collaboration, strategy, and ingenuity. Humans, fragile though they appeared, could match even the strongest enemies when working together with courage and intelligence. Hours passed as the ambush unfolded. The scouts tried to regroup, but the traps and diversions kept them off balance. Kalira's presence was intimidating and precise. She struck only when necessary, ensuring maximum effect with minimal risk. Elia's devices amplified her natural abilities, creating confusion and chaos among the patrols. By the end of the encounter, the scouts were forced to retreat, some injured, some disoriented, all shaken by the unexpected resilience of their targets. Afterward, Kalira landed near Elias, her wings folding slowly. Her breathing was steady and her eyes glowed with determination. "Your species, it is remarkable," she said telepathically. "I once believed humans were weak, incapable of changing fate, but you have shown courage, intelligence, and adaptability beyond what I imagined. Together, we are formidable." Elias smiled, humbled. "We may be small, but we have ingenuity, determination, and heart," he said. "That is enough to make a difference." Kalira nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. They spent the following days strengthening their defenses and refining their strategies. Kalira practiced longer flights, honing her agility and endurance. Elias continued to develop devices that could aid in both offense and defense, blending human creativity with alien resources. Each day, their coordination improved, their trust deepened, and their confidence grew. They were no longer a dragon and a human merely surviving. They were a team capable of facing far greater challenges. Kalira began to think beyond immediate survival. She realized that the alien empire posed a threat not just to her, but to countless others across the galaxy. The scouts were only the first wave, a test of strength and vigilance. With Elias' help, she could reclaim her honor and perhaps even inspire her people to resist tyranny. Humans, she understood now, were not weak observers. They could be catalysts for change, capable of altering the course of events with cleverness, courage, and unwavering resolve. One evening, as the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain, Kalira spoke again. "We are ready," she said telepathically, "not just to survive, but to strike at the heart of their power. We will show them that even the strongest cannot ignore the courage and intelligence of others." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of their responsibility but also the strength of their partnership. "We will be ready," he said. "Together, nothing can stop us." Their plan was precise: lure the enemy into disadvantageous positions, control their movements, and strike where they were weakest. When the alien patrol arrived, confident and unaware, Kalira and Elias executed their plan flawlessly. Smoke and light bursts confused their sensors. Landslides blocked paths. Kalira's aerial strikes forced them into narrow passages where Elias' devices created further chaos. The patrols, trained for overwhelming power, were unprepared for this combination of intelligence, strategy, and courage. They faltered, retreated, and eventually fled, leaving Kalira and Elias victorious once more. After the battle, Kalira landed near Elias, her wings folding gracefully. "I once believed strength alone could protect me," she said. "Now I see that strategy, intelligence, and cooperation are just as important. Your species has shown me this, human. You have changed the way I see the galaxy." Elias felt a deep sense of pride, not for himself alone, but for what humans could accomplish when working with determination and courage. "We can achieve more together than we ever could alone," he said. Kalira nodded, her eyes glowing with resolve. The victory strengthened their bond and prepared them for even greater challenges. Kalira's confidence grew, her strength returned, and Elias' ingenuity continued to evolve. They had turned survival into a campaign, learning to anticipate enemy movements, exploit weaknesses, and create opportunities from adversity. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new successes. By the end of the week, Kalira and Elias had transformed their small sanctuary into a fortified base. They had mapped the surrounding terrain, identified likely patrol routes, and set traps and devices to protect themselves. Kalira practiced her aerial maneuvers daily, while Elias continued to refine his inventions. Together, they had become a force capable of facing the alien empire on their terms. Kalira looked toward the horizon, where distant mountains met the sky. The alien empire was still out there, but she no longer felt fear. With Elias, she had allies, intelligence, and strategy. They were no longer simply surviving, they were preparing to take control of their destiny. Humans, once underestimated and considered weak, had proven their worth. Their courage, creativity, and determination had become a vital part of the plan. As night fell, the stars above the barren land shone brightly, distant but full of possibilities. Kalira and Elias sat together, reflecting on their victories and planning for the future. The alien empire would return, but now they had the advantage. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, stronger and wiser than they had ever been alone. The barren land, once a place of danger and despair, had become a proving ground. Kalira and Elias had transformed it into a battlefield where strategy, courage, and ingenuity triumphed over brute force. They had survived, learned, and grown together, and the future was full of possibilities. The human-dragon partnership had become a symbol of hope, demonstrating that even the smallest, seemingly weakest species could change the course of events through intelligence, determination, and courage. The barren land lay quiet under the twin suns, but the calm was deceptive. Kalira hovered above the cliffs, wings spread wide, eyes sharp and glowing. This was no ordinary day. Today, the alien empire would learn that their underestimation of both humans and dragons had been a grave mistake. Elias moved below, adjusting devices and traps, his heart steady despite the enormity of the task. He had faced danger before, but this would be the ultimate test. Together they would take the fight to the empire itself. Kalira had recovered fully. Her scales shone with iridescent colors, her wings were strong and swift, and her mind was sharper than ever. She had trained with Elias, learned human ingenuity, and regained confidence in herself. The betrayal that had once crushed her spirit had been replaced with determination and trust in her newfound ally. Elias, for his part, had grown in understanding and skill. He had learned to predict enemy movements, improvise on the spot, and trust instincts that his human training alone might not have developed. Together, they were a force unlike any the Empire had faced. The alien patrols appeared on the horizon, larger than before, more confident. They believed Kalira weakened, stranded, and dependent on a fragile human. They had not counted on the human-dragon alliance, on careful planning, or the unpredictable brilliance of a species they considered insignificant. Kalira signaled Elias, and they moved into position. Every rock, every crevice, every natural feature of the barren land had been studied and prepared for this moment. Elias activated the first series of devices, sending bursts of light into the patrol's sensors. Smoke rolled down the canyons, creating confusion, while reflective surfaces redirected beams and signals. Kalira swooped down from above, her claws precise and her movements calculated. The patrols faltered, unsure how to respond. They were trained for force, for intimidation but not for the combination of intelligence, strategy, and courage that Kalira and Elias brought to the battlefield. The scouts tried to regroup, moving as a single unit, but Elias anticipated their formation. He triggered additional devices, creating false paths and decoy signals. Kalira guided them from above, directing the scouts into narrow passages and hidden traps. Every move was coordinated, every reaction calculated. The Empire's forces, confident in their power, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Hours passed in tense engagement. Kalira used her aerial advantage to strike selectively, ensuring maximum impact with minimal risk. Elias moved among the traps, adjusting devices and responding to the scouts' movements in real time. The barren land had become a fortress, a maze where the Empire's numerical strength counted for little. The scouts began to retreat, disoriented and weakened, and Kalira's voice rang in Elias' mind. "They cannot match courage with force alone," she said. "They are strong but not wise. That is their weakness. Yet you have shown intelligence, determination, and bravery beyond what I imagined. Together, we are more than formidable. We are unstoppable." Elias smiled, feeling humbled and honored. "We may be small, but courage and cleverness can outmatch strength," he said. With the scouts defeated, Kalira turned her attention to the Empire's main outpost, a fortress visible in the distance. It was heavily guarded, and the enemy believed themselves untouchable. But Kalira and Elias had learned that preparation, creativity, and courage could overcome even the most daunting odds. They devised a plan, combining human ingenuity with dragon power. Devices, traps, and misdirection would pave the way, while Kalira's strength and aerial mastery would strike decisively. The night before the assault, Kalira and Elias reviewed every detail. They discussed timing, positions, and contingencies. Kalira's mind was sharp and focused, while Elias contributed his knowledge of alien behavior and human creativity. Together, they refined the plan, ensuring every possibility had been considered. It was a partnership built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. They had become a single unit, their strengths perfectly complementing each other. At dawn, they moved into position. Kalira flew high, scouting the fortress and marking patrol paths. Elias positioned devices and traps, blending technology with natural terrain. Smoke, light, and sound would create confusion, while Kalira's strikes would be precise and decisive. As the Empire's guards began their day, they found themselves caught in a web of misdirection and strategy. Their numbers and firepower counted for little against the combination of intelligence, preparation, and courage. Kalira descended, striking with precision, disabling key defenses and forcing the guards into narrow passages where Elias' devices amplified the chaos. The Empire had never faced an opponent like this, a dragon who combined strength with strategy, and a human who could anticipate and manipulate enemy movements. The fortress became a maze of confusion for the Empire's forces, every plan they had prepared undone by ingenuity and courage. Hours of careful engagement passed. Kalira's strikes were swift and precise, targeting critical points, while Elias' devices created illusions, distractions, and barriers. The Empire's forces faltered, unable to respond effectively to the unpredictable combination of dragon and human. Finally, the outpost's main defenses collapsed, and the remaining forces retreated in disarray. Victory had been achieved, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, strategy, and courage, the very qualities humans often underestimated. Kalira landed on the highest tower of the fortress, her wings spreading wide, shining in the morning light. She looked across the barren land over the defeated Empire's forces and felt a surge of pride. She had regained her strength, reclaimed her honor, and forged an alliance that proved that intelligence and courage could triumph over even the strongest enemies. Elias approached, standing beside her, proud but humble. "We did it," he said. Kalira nodded, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Together, we are stronger than anything they could imagine." Kalira's people, witnessing her survival and her alliance with humans, began to reconsider their beliefs. Strength alone was not enough. Intelligence, strategy, and courage were equally vital. Humans, often dismissed as weak, had proven themselves capable of altering the course of events, earning respect from beings far stronger than themselves. In the following days, Calira and Elias worked to stabilize the region. They reinforced the fortress, ensured the safety of nearby settlements, and sent messages to allies, signaling that resistance was possible. Calira's regained strength and Elia's ingenuity created a partnership that inspired hope across the barren land and beyond. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were allies, strategists, and friends capable of shaping the fate of worlds. Calira reflected on the journey. She had been abandoned, wounded, and betrayed, yet she had survived. She had learned to trust, to adapt, and to collaborate with a species she once considered fragile. Elias had shown her that courage and intelligence were just as powerful as strength and fire. Together, they had turned survival into triumph, demonstrating that even the smallest and seemingly weakest beings could make a difference. Elias, too, reflected on their journey. Humans were often underestimated, but they had shown that determination, ingenuity, and courage could match or surpass brute strength. Working with Calira had opened his mind to possibilities he had never imagined. Together, they had forged a bond that transcended species, built on respect, trust, and a shared commitment to survival and justice. As the twin suns set, casting long shadows over the barren land, Calira and Elias stood together on the highest tower. The Empire's forces had been defeated, the fortress secured, and hope restored. Calira looked at Elias, her mind echoing with gratitude and respect. "You have changed my view of your species, human," she said. "I once believed humans weak and insignificant. Now I see courage, intelligence, and determination in your kind. Together, we have achieved what neither of us could alone." Elias smiled, feeling the depth of their partnership. "We are stronger together," he said simply. "That is what makes us capable of great things." Calira and Elias had proven that courage, intelligence, and teamwork could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. The alien empire would remember this day, and so would the galaxy. Humans, often underestimated, had earned their place among the stars not through force, but through ingenuity, courage, and heart. With the fortress secured and the land under their watch, Calira began to rebuild her influence among her people. She sent messages of hope and resilience, showing that survival and honor were not defined by brute strength alone. Elias worked alongside her, applying human ingenuity to healing, rebuilding, and planning for the future. Together, they forged a new path, one where humans and dragons could cooperate, respect, and protect one another. The barren land, once a place of despair and danger, had become a symbol of victory and hope. Calira, the dragon princess, had regained her strength and honor, while Elias, the human medic, had demonstrated that courage, intelligence, and ingenuity could change the course of events. Together, they had achieved the impossible, proving that even the smallest and weakest species could rise to greatness when guided by determination, strategy, and heart. As the twin suns set for the last time on the horizon, Calira and Elias looked toward the future. Challenges would come, and the galaxy remained full of threats, but they were ready. They had survived betrayal, injury, and overwhelming odds. They had learned from each other, grown together, and formed an unbreakable bond. The Human-Dragon Alliance had proven its worth. Calira's honor had been restored, and humans had been recognized not as weak outsiders, but as capable, intelligent, and courageous allies. The story of their journey would echo across the barren land and beyond, a testament to the power of collaboration, courage, and ingenuity. Together, they faced the stars, ready for whatever lay ahead. The Empire had been challenged, Calira's honor restored, and humanity's ingenuity recognized. The barren land, once a place of death and despair, had become a place of hope, triumph, and the beginning of a new era. Kalira and Elia's dragon and human stood together, united and victorious, proving that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the greatest odds.